Hello and we are live. Happy Monday, everybody. My name is Christian Fischer. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show. And I know I say this at every episode, but I have a really amazing human being today for you listeners. Not only is he amazingly good at what he does, he's been a renowned hospitality leadership coach. He's a speaker, he's an entrepreneur for 17 years in our industry. Anybody doing anything for 17 years, he's amazing at it. And what I really admire about our guest is how driven he is in his mission in cultivating excellence in leadership and team development. So I'm really excited to introduce you guys to my special guest today. But before we do this, we do this. And we are back again. My name is Christian Fischer. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show. And I have an amazing guest for our listeners today. Truth be told, I met him a few months ago, and everybody knows of my top 100 list and all the people we would like to have on the show. And after I had the opportunity to spend some time with him, he went from here up pretty high up on my list. And I'm really excited to have Matt Rolfe with me today. Matt, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and have this conversation with you and your audience today.
So I'm just really excited about learning a little bit more and have our listeners learn a little bit more on not just the way you look at hospitality, the way you look at networking, the way you look at driving the program forward, and how driven you have been over the last few years to just make your mark and your impact in the industry. So with that, Matt, tell our listeners a little bit about who Matt is, where you're calling in from, and what you do today for the industry.
Yeah, so my name is Matt Rolfe. I'm a hospitality leadership coach based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I'll go back a little bit to the origin story of just drive and really my wants that I've become so passionate about, and what gets me out of bed every day is how do we support and help people? And that goes back basically to my childhood. I didn't realize it till I worked with my coach, and he told me a little bit around a concept that your work is your wound.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I was diagnosed with a learning disability. And rather than kind of be taught based on my learning disability and a lot of trauma and situations that were going on at home, the school system wasn't built. Like, I can't blame the teachers. The teachers weren't trained to handle a child with my energy. So it's basically put in small classrooms and prevented the opportunity to learn, but pushed through the school system. And that stayed with me. And I spent probably until I'm 43 now, so I might say 42 years, but let's say 35 years I spent trying to prove to the rest of the world that I wasn't, quote unquote, I hate the word, but stupid.
Yeah.
And I was trying to have that scrappy chip on my shoulder. But as I matured, especially as an entrepreneur, it just became very passionate that I'm deeply engaged in telling people, creating space and time for them to recognize what they can do rather than be told what they can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been very grateful, and it drives me. And I'm not the one achieving the results anymore. I'm supporting the space and conversation for others to achieve their results. I find it incredibly fulfilling to watch people step into their power and into their opportunity. But that's what lights me up. And the work that I do, luckily enough, 3 to 4 days a week, I'm in a room doing a talk or working with a leader or a leadership team, helping them get clear first on themselves, then on their goals, and on how they execute.
I absolutely love that. And for our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in the hospitality industry and what inspired you to not just become that leadership and team development coach, but really an icon and a voice for the industry?
Thank you for those kind words. I actually started my career working for Bacardi. So a lot of us know the brand Bacardi, then moved to what we would all know as Anheuser-Busch.
Yep.
Actually owned by another company now. But when I was working for Anheuser-Busch, I had these incredible operators that I was supporting and working with. But what I found is, even though they're in the top 10, top 20 sellers list in the districts I was in, many of them were going bankrupt. And these people became my friends. Like, there's a few accounts. If anybody's done field sales, you develop really very personal relationships with these people over time. And I couldn't understand how they were so successful for me.
Yeah.
And I watched them lose their business, their relationship, and sometimes part of their life for a portion of it to addiction or other distractions. So with that, it was the opportunity to identify and gain the experience of what was happening. But what I really wanted to do is help and support change in that space.
Yep.
And how do we take those learnings and create a different process or a path for them to kind of eliminate the unnecessary risks that were presented?
I mean, that's amazing, and that's just a huge thing to take on. And by the way, before I forget, he worked for Anheuser and for Bacardi. Today's show is sponsored by no, it's not.
Yeah. So I don't get jumping into those things. They're not cutting me checks anymore, but I still like a Budweiser.
Yeah, but if any from Budweiser is listening, we are looking for a sponsor, so we would be happy to sponsor that. But I love that, and listen, that's not an easy thing to go into, because in our industry we're not known for raising our hands and say, "Hey, I need help here." Not only is it not well perceived, people think it's a sign of weakness if I say, "Hey, I need help."
Yeah.
And for me, every time I hear that story from you, it hits me personally, because I had a few friends, and one of my partners had a restaurant partner 30 years ago. And at the end of the night, drinking 3 bottles of wine, drinking 12 6-packs of beer, and all the stuff he was drinking, he thought it was normal. This is how you de de-stress kind of thing and kind of kick back. It's not normal.
No.
And for me, taking that on, where do you find that not just inspiration, but that drive comes to take that on? Because if you bring this to the marketplace today, and especially in our industry, people don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I hid in my life, so I didn't talk for years about my learning disability. I didn't talk for years that I'm somebody who has high functioning anxiety and ADD. If you watch me on this podcast and the video, you'll see it. In certain environments, it's a superpower, and others, it's not. But what I did is I kind of hid all this, and then through, as a coach, I have a coach. And I started to become comfortable in my own skin, which I don't think I ever was. And I found that there's power in healing for myself through sharing my story, but the absolute benefit to show up. I know I get pulled into some of the most successful operators in North America, as you do. And when I talk to them, their businesses, their P&Ls or bank accounts might be flush. But the senior leaders losing their relationship at home with their kids or significant other because of time. So I think this is sharing the reality and the human side of our experiences with an audience to create space for them to realize help, asking for help, and how I met you and I've come to you. And what I feel so inspiring about our relationship and who you are is the ability to come for help and the help you offer genuinely. Our first conversation, I know you said what we ended it, but I know you know what you said to me, but I'm sure you said it calls us, how can I help you? So I think the side of looking at, we're repositioning, or Brene Brown helped us, vulnerability, blame, and shame. This is my beliefs. My beliefs aren't right. I think we all have power in community and power in asking for help. Not everybody needs to believe me in my vision and my venture and my passion, but I feel when we can be candid and vulnerable, we can create deeper connection with ourselves and with those around us.
I absolutely love that. And I love the way you phrase that, because I honestly believe, learning disability or not, for me, what we tell our clients is, first of all, there's no way of getting back what you lost yesterday. The past is gone. And if certain circumstances wouldn't have happened to you, because I honestly believe we are combined averages of our experiences, our what we perceived the experience was, and the connections and the people which were around us. And if that wouldn't have happened, you wouldn't be who you are today. And for me, I think we as collective need to embrace this a little bit more, because I think we need to celebrate this. Because if I have an experience and I don't improve upon it, or I don't work on it, then it becomes a problem. But if we are collectively saying, you know what, I need help. You know what, I've been to therapy. I think therapy should be becoming part of any college, because I think we all need it.
100%.
And for me, it's what I really admire on our conversation and the way you look at it is it comes in two forms. Number one, you're super aware of where you are and who you are. And not just that, I absolutely love that about you. The next thing is, I think it makes you keenly aware on when you communicate with somebody, because we all need somebody who sees in us what we don't see in ourselves. And having done that work and all the stuff you went through, I think it makes you a superpower. You call it a superpower, and I honestly believe it is, because with that experience and the stuff you worked on, you could kind of see through the bullshit, you know. And for me, I absolutely love that about you.
And there's a couple of things there that I'll expand on that were breakthroughs for me. Is I didn't read a book till I was about 25, and I got handed a copy of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And so one of my favorite books, and I know it might not convert language-wise as much today, but the core message is still there. But part of the exercise is see yourself as other people see you. So I love the book so much, I went and bought the workbook, and you give it to 5 people close to you, and they fill out honest, candid truth. And it was the hardest exercise I've ever done in my life. But I recognize the power when somebody cares, when you can create a relationship with someone where their feedback can be heard and know it's coming from a genuine place, although it might not be easy to read or write. It's such a powerful exercise. And my want is, we think about the last, just say 5 years, if we go post-pandemic, you think about how many leaders have had crashing waves consistently of challenge and change. That, although we've rebounded and we've reopened, my question is always, have we healed from our experiences? And how do we create space for a leader to say, I'm really doing well over here, but I have some curiosity questions. And again, it doesn't, however we want to frame the language. But I think before we had another conversation, but just vulnerably, I had a therapist ask me about 5 or 6 years ago, is when's the last time you felt joy? And I haven't shared this often, but I shared it today. I'll share it with the audience because there's trust. I looked at the therapist and said, I don't understand the question. It just that whole side of how is that possible with all the great that's going on around us, that we can't see our own success. And the other thing I realized, and this is a lesson, we're both fans of Tony Robbins, and I had a chance to go with Date with Destiny. And I'll squish this story, but it was day 4, it's midnight, been in the room since 8 a.m. And Tony asked us to do this exercise to say, write out what allows you to be happy. And it just, so here's the dad I need to be, the friend I need to be, the ex-husband I need to be, the entrepreneur, the health, the fitness. And as I turned page 3 with tears rolling down my face, I realized as a leader, I was designing an unachievable game. But so did the other 1,000 high-performing leaders in the room.
Yeah.
And at that point, I let it go. And I think that's what I took from what you just shared is, how do we be peaceful? How do we create space for people to understand what joy, fulfillment, success, whatever word they want to wrap around it, to define it without the weight of having to do everything. And sorry for the rant there, but I'm passionate about the topic. Create realistic space for people.
I love that. And, I think you and I are both very, very fond in the work of Tony Robbins. And this is not a show sponsored by Tony Robbins, but if anybody can make it happen and go to Date with Destiny, it's the single best event you will ever go to. And, I attended Landmark and everything else, but doing Date with Destiny, I think he's the best in the industry in that, and the feedback coming out of that is amazing. So I want to pivot the conversation a little bit, because listen, you are one of the real leadership coaches out there, not just because we're friends, but I think you approach leadership from a whole different way. So talk to us a little bit. How common leadership challenges do you see in the industry, and how can you, or give me some examples, how you address those?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different ones, but often when we work with leaders, I look to identify patterns. Every single leader, or leadership team, company, or brand has patterns that are happening for you right now. Some are working, some are not.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things that I see is this: we've almost been designed based on our phones and our emails and everything else to have an addiction, where some of us have capacity and some of us don't. So don't worry, my words, some things I say right now are meant to create resistance. If you feel resistance towards what I say, it's just to try to find what might be important to you. But the side of when it looks to the overcommitment side, so how do we do, what do we do really well? Why do we exist as a restaurant or a team? What do we do? And is everybody clear? And are our efforts on a daily basis going in that direction?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm constantly working with leaders the last few years is, how does the leader make sure to take care of themselves before they take care of their team? Often we get our needs met by solving problems for people around us. And I did this for a decade, where I was actually solving problems for people where they didn't want me to solve their problems. And I watch leaders where they've created this dependent, codependent relationship with themselves and with the people around them, where it stunts the growth of the leader and also stunts the growth of the people and ultimately the brand. So that might sound a little unclear, but it's, what is our relationship with ourselves and our people inside the business? How do we focus on what matters most within all of the stuff and things that we could do? As a coach, I'm actually convincing people to do less, not more.
Yeah. I love that. So talk to me then, with all the people you work. So what are some of the key traits which define a effective leader in the days, 2024, especially in the hospitality sector? Look what COVID did. It really um, brought forward on how fragile the industry actually is. I think leadership changed since that. And so I'm curious with all the people you're working with, what are some of the key traits which define an effective leader, especially in today's hospitality sector?
Yeah, I think just to bring back what we've gone through, and again, not to use the P word in pandemic, but when we look at all of the challenges, we kind of have this fight, flight, or freeze mentality. And I know for a lot of us now, the freeze has been added in, and a lot of us just froze based on the amount of change that was happening around us. The most high performing leaders have a couple things. They have a very clear routine. So the routine, and that routine usually starts with themselves during their day. But when I look at the foundation of what leads to their success is they have the ability to make decisions.
Yep.
They don't necessarily need to make the right decisions, but they have the ability to make the decision which is intended to move in the direction of their goals. And that, I think the challenge right now is based on the opportunity. There's so much awareness and choice of what we could do. Who could see through the clutter, take the reins? Because I believe in times of challenge and change, what our people want from us is clarity of direction. Top performing leaders and that's really what I've done. I've had the pleasure of studying high performing leaders, and I get to sit in the room and watch them make decisions and hear their challenges that other people don't hear, whether it be with their team or especially in the one-on-one context. But sometimes we just need to trust our gut, get not too much information, the right amount of information, and move forward.
It's awesome. And you kind of touched upon a little bit with, around teams. And I agree with you. Because for me, if I look at the people we work with and which have not just a high functioning executive team, but a very successful driven team, it usually starts with the leader. And for me, when you walk into a facility for the first meeting, you can feel if there's genuine leadership, because I think there's a few different forms of leadership. There's a genuine leadership and there's a customer facing leadership.
Yep.
And you can feel this when you walk in. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? So what role does innovation play within leadership, and especially within the hospitality industry? And actually, let's go deeper. How can a leader cultivate that kind of leadership amongst their teams?
Yeah, I think I do really, you can feel a leader from across the room. You can see a leader from across the room. And not to go back to language that we know, but I'm a big believer that our physical state delivers. I have a very strict morning routine. I have a process before I do a talk. I have a process before I go into a workshop to make sure I show up in the right energy, because I know people can feel you before they hear you. And I think high performing leaders are very present in how they show up in each and every room. I had an incredible gentleman say to me as I started my business, they said, "You're either a leader in all areas of your life or you're not." His name's Warren Ruster. He's a multi-billionaire NBA player, worked in the Bush administration, senior, and just had this incredible oil career. But he pulled me aside. He said, "You've got all the tools, Matt, but you're not being a leader outside of work. All your energy is going to work, and I want to warn you because I care about you."
Yeah.
Life-changing experience. So I think that side of understanding our state energy and how we show up is really, really critical. And then I think there's a foundation, and this is the simplest form, is to create clarity, over communicate clarity, and reinforce clarity. That's language that I borrowed, but I do think it's the cleanest way to say it. Most leaders feel we communicate once, and if we continue to communicate, it's micromanagement and we break down trust. But in my belief is people want consistency. They've been told stories and things in the past that they're going to hold on and wait and see if we're actually going to execute. I think a leader's job is to create clarity in the direction of our goals, reinforce it, and over communicate to the point. If your team can't do it impressive, you communicating your vision or why you care about your guest or your people, maybe third or fourth or fifth would be about your goals. Profitability is a result of consistent human behavior. If they can't do a fun impression of you and have some fun with it, you're probably not communicating enough.
Wow. I want people to play that back. There was some powerful stuff you just shared, and you made it sound really simple. Is because I think that's the key for any successful business. And I mean, I couldn't have, this is absolutely powerful. So for any listeners today, if you want to take one thing away from this, cue back. 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It's amazing the nuggets you just dropped here. Also, you said something else. And for me, that brings up the question all the time. In our industry, people believe in order to be a leader, I need to be the CEO, the COO, or the CFO. Where do you take? So can you make it more relatable if I'm a sous chef in a kitchen? How does that type of leadership you just described, how does that work for me? I have no morning routine. I do whatever the chef asks me to do. I'm tired. I have stuff to take care of. How can I manage that?
Yeah. So I think, and I can relate to that, right? We all have lives that can, no matter what we're doing, heart surgeons have repetition in their roles, and we can get used to the routine because it just is.
Yeah.
Let's say you're somebody growing up in the culinary community or the front of house leadership side, is if we want to take control of our own opportunity, it's really anchoring, what do you want? And I'm not saying you need these big audacious goals that we're
Yeah.
going after all of these things, but I want you to be a bit selfish in your development and in your path. And my recommendation to you first is be great at your existing role. I
Mhm.
talk to dozens of Gen Y and Gen Z leaders a month, which I feel that my phone rings randomly, and they want the next job. I said that to get the next job, you got to be great at what yours is. But I think it's a fair question to show up and be great, and then go ask the people above you and say, either how did you get to where you are, or what do I need to do to be successful? I worked with 8 chefs on Monday, and we did an exercise that I asked the chefs at the table to say, write down what you feel your people feel their core responsibilities are. These were exec chefs, so they're sous chefs. Then I had one of the senior exec chefs go into the kitchen and get them to write out to see if they matched.
Yeah.
So I think, what do you need to be great at your job? And sure, there might be prep for somebody. Sure, got that. But to be great at your job as a leader, what did you need to do? And did they line up or not? And it wasn't to highlight that they didn't. It was to highlight how easily can we get on the same page. And sometimes your leader might not be telling you how to be great, but you know yourself. If you ask in the right frame and the right energy to show up and say, I really love that I work here. I really respect my job, and I appreciate you as a leader. At some point, I'd like to learn and grow.
Mhm.
What might I be able to work on to become better as the next version of myself? And you can ask it simpler. What do I need to do to be great at my job? What do I need to do to advance? But be brave enough to ask the question. You deserve the answer. And your employer or chef or whoever, give them space and time, but they also deserve to give you the answer.
I love that. And as you started talking about it, I listened to one of your other podcasts,
Yeah.
and you also talked a little bit about self-leadership. And I want to go a little bit into the self-leadership because you said it earlier, if you can't motivate yourself and can you get yourself to do stuff, how you can motivate a team. And for me, in our organization, we call it the self. It's 3 things. It's really simple. How am I self-aware? How am I self-motivated? And how is my self-discipline? And if you manage self, other things fall in place. So it's our simple thing: self-awareness, self-motivation, and self-discipline. And but and I forgot who you were on the podcast, but you talked about the power of self-leadership, that things start with you, and you alluded to it earlier with your morning routine. And I actually want you to go a little bit in, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners, because I heard about your morning routine, and for me, you becoming my teacher in morning routine, because I think I need to level up. And for me, as I listen to you, the way you manage your morning routine, I'm not self-disciplined enough for my morning routine. And ever since I heard that podcast, I'm stepping it up. I come here earlier. And for me, as I started my first day doing something similar, you're going to describe it a little bit.
Sure.
I remember Tony Robbins' Hour of Power.
Yep.
And, the thing, he was like, man, I know it. I just didn't do it. It took Matt to kick me in the ass to do it. I want to talk a little bit about that. Talk to me about self-leadership, and then give our audience just a glimpse in how you manage your morning, because I think that alone will level up anybody who is listening to it and is willing to step up and do the work.
Yeah, and I'll go, I really went through a lesson in the last couple of years. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, really busy with business, and a few years into a divorce. And it wasn't a traumatic divorce. It is what it is. But it was really, really hard. So what I found myself doing was being really successful at work, being a good dad, and doing all the stuff and things and not feeling like it's enough. I don't know if anybody out in the audience can relate that we're doing all the things, but when you sit with yourself, by yourself, it just doesn't feel like enough. And I think that's a common trend for high performing leaders. So I had to change, continue to evolve. And what I realized is my compelling future, my compelling story, my vision was incomplete. It wasn't a closed loop. It was an open circle. So I went in and did some work on what I needed to do to close that loop. And one thing I know about myself, or I know about leaders, and I study leaders. As a kid, I studied baseball players. I used to love how they pitched and how they held the bat. Now I study leaders through the same lens. But when I looked at the pattern of successful leaders, whether their morning was noon or 4 a.m., they all had a routine.
Yeah.
And that routine set them up for success. So what I've done for the last few years is created a simple broken down routine. And I'm generous with myself where it's fluid. I stick to my routine, but my emotions are fluid, and I just paying attention to my body. As somebody who has high functioning anxiety at times, why my routine is so important is it allows me to balance my mind. So I have high functioning anxiety and ADD. If I don't get control of my mind, if I don't say I'm in control here, I can function. My day goes well, and I get to the end of a 12-hour day and say, what did I just do? So how my days start, the very simple process. It's just being present, feet on the ground, and just I've had a lot of challenge the last couple of years. I can feel tears in my eyes right now, and it's not negative tears, it just is. But the feet on my ground, and say I'm grateful to be here and have this opportunity. I'm not trying to be woo-woo or cheesy with the audience. I'm just effing grateful to put my feet on the ground. The next thing I do is as process. I learned from somebody who was ultra marathon runner, and said, what was the key to your training? And she said, when I get in the taxi to go to the gym, I know I'm on track. So she lived in New York City. She had to get in a taxi. My thing is, what's the micro step I needed to take? So in the morning, I drink lemon water, so warm water and lemon. I know when I cut into a lemon that my day is on the right track. I don't care where I am. I'll find a lemon in any city in the world. Trust me, I've ripped it open with my hands if I had to, but I find that lemon. Sometimes it's not easy, but that's a signal to myself as Matt, you made a commitment to yourself before everybody else. And it starts off my routine. I then have a simple gratitude journal. I'm a firm believer that we don't live our life. We live the life we focus on. Again, you can bend the quotes however you want. I'm somebody who can focus on the gap rather than the gain or the process. On my side, the gratitude journal takes 3 minutes. I use the 5-minute journal, or I think they just updated the name recently. And there's lots of great resources out there. You can use your phone, you can use your mind, but how do you focus on something positive? And then I work on my physical body. I realize I'm somebody who can do things aggressively in spurts. If you know me long enough, you can see that my weight will fluctuate by 30, 40 pounds. So I had to get control of my routine because it's hard to stand up consistently and share discipline. And I had everything else but routine. So my commitment is no matter how big or an hour-long workout, I work on myself and my body first. I don't care about the physical side. What it does for it, I just did something hard to start my day that was for me.
Yeah.
And here's the last thing that I do. I realized in the last few years, I will do a lot for myself, but I will do more for others around me. There's some things I'll do for my children. I actually have a business partner in the other side of my business who has a son who he's high on the spectrum for autism. He's a wonderful little human, and as is my partner. I know when I don't have the gas in the tank that I can think of my kids and I can think of Henry. And if I do right by Henry, because he needs me to be the version, so James can be the version, so we can earn. Earning is a result of great, doing the good work.
Yeah.
But sometimes I've had to sit and say, you don't want to do it for you. I got a picture of they're sitting on opposite sides here. These two little beautiful humans will motivate me to do things I couldn't possibly imagine. And if I need that extra gas in the tank, I also need to think more outside just my direct nuclear family. How do I do it for Henry?
It's amazing. That's amazing. And every time I hear that story, for me, I'm lemon juice. I don't think I ever hunted down a lemon if I didn't have one, but I need to step it up. But
You have the lemon game. That's like that.
I room temperature water and lemon in the morning, I think it does something. And if it doesn't do anything, just make it feel better. I will do it. We do it every day. I even bought myself the fancy $100 lemon squeezer because I felt guilty by not using it. And then the journaling for me, I love that. And if there's one thing I encourage any listeners to do is you need to journal. So for me, I journal in the morning and at night before I leave here at my desk. what worked, what didn't work, how can I serve my employees better, how can I serve my companies better, how can I serve myself better. And for me, I think it was Tony Robbins who says, if a life is worth living, it's worth recording. And for me, there's days I just sit here and I look back of a journal 3 years ago, and it's a reminder for me on how far you can come in a very short period of time. And for me, I don't think as a collective, we don't put enough weight on a morning routine. And when I hear your conversation, and especially you do it for your kids, um, I think this for me is it's the greatest thing anybody can do, because at the end of the day, we do what we do here is because I want my kids to have choices. And I love what you said, because I so align with that we do more for others than we do for ourselves, because my kids drive nicer cars than I drove at their age. My kids lead a better life than I did at their age, you know.
100%.
So and so for me, it really connects. That's why I love, and I just looked at the clock, we over 30 minutes already. And I feel like we just started the conversation that we did the last 30 minutes ago. And for me, it's just really powerful. So for any listeners, I encourage you, no, I challenge you. Listen to what he just said about his morning routine. Do it for 30 days and then leave a comment below what the impact was for you. Because that little pivot, that little change makes all the difference. And I also love that your friend says, and I'm not in a taxi on the way to the gym, I kind of let myself down. And for me, I come here early before my team comes. And some days it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's 25 minutes. But that little thing, it honestly think it sets you up for the day, and it just gives direction. And for me, it goes back when we talk about the selves, and for me, that's just really important doing this. And around self leadership, you are in charge. And for me, we make it really simple, because when we talk about self awareness, it's all about understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. Simple as that. When we talk about self motivation, why am I doing what I do? And you just confirm that. And then for me, self discipline in the morning is a routine,
Yeah.
because I can't be disciplined if I don't follow a routine. So for me, you just simplified ourselves. We call it the power self internally, because we do this as an organization all the time. And I encourage anybody to do a regimented morning routine. Now I'm at a point, the other day they closed the road and I was a few minutes late. I felt anxious all morning, like, did I forget something? Something just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. And then I was in here, shit. I know what I didn't do, and going back over, we have this room, we have a Peloton bike in there. And I said, I want to do the Peloton bike because it was an expensive purchase. And I didn't want to just have it sit there. I want to use it because it was expensive. And for me, I realized I'm not really a cycler. So I will actually trade it in for something else.
Yeah.
Doing that morning routine, I'm sitting here, I was like, something doesn't feel right. What did I forget? I was like, did I? And I was like, shit, I didn't do my stuff. And going over there and just doing this for 15 minutes, it just resets not just my day. It really helps. So thanks for being vulnerable, and thanks for sharing that, because for me, I find this absolutely amazing. And you make it sound so simple. And it was great for the first 3 days. On day 4, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Matt said I need to do it for my kids. Okay, I gotta go there early. And then on day 5, it rained. I was like, oh shit. And I did it anyway,
Yeah.
And I'm just encourage people to do it. It's amazing to do.
And here's just one thing I'll share really quickly. If somebody's out there and says this isn't, I get it, I hear you, but I'm stuck. I want you to hear me. I've been where you are. I've been in depressive states in the last few years. I found if anybody needs help, I just want somebody to listen without judgment. Part of my commitment to this community is you DM me and I'll get on a call with you. I'm not there to add judgment or advice, but I'm there to create space to support you and just hear you. You are not alone if you're trying to find that gear. It's about the first step. It's not about the first 5K. It's about the first letter in the journal. It's not about doing it for a month.
Yeah.
Take your first steps and commit. Like Chris said, commit to, like we've got to commit to things, or we'll shed them like New Year's resolutions. But if somebody out there just says, hey, Matt, I'm feeling stuck right now, I don't have any answers, we might not even say much. I'm here to support the community. You can DM me, and my commitment to you is in the appropriate amount of time, I'll jump on a call.
We really appreciate it. And in the show notes below, we will have Matt's contact. I think you guys need to check him out. You need to follow him. So let's switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
Listen, you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
There's that demand of work. There's the demand of, that key account management, the stuff you do. There's the demand of staying true to yourself and who you are and maintaining your effective leadership.
Yeah.
How do you manage all of that?
I think it's a work in process, and it is fluid in time to time. But I've through maturity and through mistake, I've found a way to find balance. So I know I
Mhm.
can't be the leader I need to be if I'm not investing in myself, if I'm not fully present with my children. So when I'm with my kids, I think my kids want time and presence,
Yeah.
not just space. Me to be in the same physical walls as them, but me to be present with them when I am. And then the other side for me is I need to be learning and growing. So if I'm making a commitment to myself, my body, my kids, and my learning and development, then I create the right space and opportunity.
Mm.
The other thing is, one thing that was said to me during the pandemic, I don't know why it hit me so hard, is the concept of boundaries. And
Yeah.
boundaries always made so much sense, but I was working with a group of master therapists training on stuff that I'm looking to bring to hospitality leaders. And what hit me is I've allowed others to have boundaries with me, but I've never felt I deserved to have boundaries with others. And about 5 years ago, I respectfully changed that. My email response reminder will say my email response is 4 days. If you need an immediate response and you're that close to me, you probably have my cell number. Text me. But on the side is I have very clear boundaries, and I've learned to say no. And I think learning to say no has helped more people around me. It's created space for others to do work I shouldn't have been involved in. But I think it's just that structure of what matters most, saying no, and creating respectful boundaries. I've lost both my parents to cancer. I'm 43. My mom's anniversary of death was 10 years. Like I lost people early. Life is precious. I could have my needs fulfilled at work, or I could have my needs fulfilled at work and with my kids and with myself. And there's a space for some social there, but that's also shrunk as well. So I think it's just, and I do a check-in every 3 months. What matters most? There's 3 spheres. How do I want to contribute? And they move around. I'm sure you've seen that one before too. Right?
Yeah.
But the exercises work if you work the exercises. What needs it? And last year I needed to be home. So I said no to some work that would put me on airplanes too much because my children needed me at their age. I've got a very great deal with my daughter. She said, "Daddy, when you're away, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm helping people. And if I'm not, I'll come back and she's got my back."
That is awesome. And I also like what you just said. You need to do the work, because for me, my personal example is I joined a gym 6 months ago, and I haven't seen any impact in the way I look or the way I feel. So it's 6 months. I said, I need to drive down there and see what's going on,
Yep.
because I haven't seen anything going on. So let me kind of pivot the questions a little bit, because for me, first off, thanks a lot for giving so freely of the gift of your time and sharing really some super powerful, not just anecdotes, but personal stories, because I honestly believe we learn in listening. So talk to me a little bit. What advice would you give to an emerging leader, somebody young in the industry who is looking to make a significant impact in not just the hospitality industry, but in their career as a large?
So I think I really encourage you just to spend some time really thinking about what you want and why. So the wants, and we can go through Instagram and see all this stuff, but I want you to take it a farther step. It's not just what do I want, but what's going to create sustainable change for you is really what's the benefit. So everybody who's watching this is highly successful, and the challenge is, for me to go from the seat that I'm in to across the room, I need to take that first step. I need gravity pulling me in a new direction. So what I really want you to do is really get clear as to what you want. It might be the next role. It might be balance with your significant other outside of work. It might be, hey, I want to work and do a half marathon this summer. It doesn't matter the details, but I want you to prove to yourself that once you create enough excitement and energy around something, you'll find the opportunity. Most people spend more time planning their vacation than they do their future. I know it's a cheesy saying, but I wholeheartedly believe it. I want you to spend a bit of time on you. I want you to be respectfully selfish, selfish in a genuine way. When we show up, I learned this through business, when we're looking to serve just others, sometimes we don't show up and bring the most value of ourselves. But I think when you come in a genuine mindset to help and support others as well as yourself, that opportunities will present themselves quickly. And that might get overly simplified. We've got exercises to support it, but spend the time, do the work, get clear.
I love that. And we coming to the end of the show. I have one more question, and then actually we have a rapid fire question. And my team rotates questions, and I think Mackenzie picked really hard ones for you. So
Great.
before we get into the last question and wrap up today's conversation, if you haven't done so, please join out at disruptivechef.club, which is our private community. Get a front row seat and you learn all the latest and greatest what we as an organization are up to. And we do some amazing raffles every month. We just shipped out a new iPad mini to one of our raffle winners. So if you haven't done so, go to the disruptivechef.club and become part of our private community. We really appreciate it. So with that, Matt, my last question for you today is, because we are called the Disruptive Chef, what do you think, what needs disrupting within the future of the hospitality leadership space?
Yeah. So I think when we really look to disrupt it, I think when it comes to your people, we need and this might sound simple, we need a strategy. I need you to really disrupt. So we're in a market where we're still talking about staff shortages. Even if you're attracting the right people, we have retention issues and turnover. I want you to turn that effing strategy on its head. I want you to sit down and look at it and say, how do you stand out? Because hospitality is not competing with hospitality for leaders anymore. We're competing with all retail. We're competing with the Amazons of the world. I had a client lose somebody to Amazon recently because Amazon was going to pay for their college. The fight is real. Fights are good. Good, friendly competition is good. But I want you to think about, if our experiences are delivered through our heart of house and our front of house staff, what are we doing to support them, make them feel seen, valued, and heard, and to develop them? Some people want that, some people don't, but they all want to be valued in their position. I want you to be scrappy and intentional for your brand and do something that disrupts the market. It can just be as simple as how you have conversation, how you communicate, how you schedule, how you promote, how you recognize. And then the last point, I would build an aggressive recognition strategy. Recognition is free. We spoke to 25,000 plus leaders last year. Not one of them said they were recognized too much in their employment. Find a way to be grateful and tell your people how you feel about them. Disrupt the pattern. Tell them you care. Do it in the right way that's genuine to you, but you do those two things.
I love that. I love that. That was some really powerful stuff with wrapping up our conversation. But before we get to our rapid fire question, first off, Matt, thanks a lot for the gift of your time. Thanks for spending almost an hour with us. And to our listeners, I hope you realized why I said he's not only an amazing leader in the stuff he does, he's just amazingly good in being a human. And at the end of the day, this is a human interaction industry. And just hearing again the story of the things you had to overcome and how you created you. That's what I hear. This is not by some kind of chance. You created Matt. And for me, this is just really powerful because there's so many people in our industry who struggle and you don't need to be alone. And hopefully this message came through because Matt was very generous with his time and the insights he shared. And he said, if you feel like, reach out to him. So Matt, if people want to know more about you, how can they find out more about you?
Yeah, the best way to do is you can go to mattrolfe.com. You'll see the site. We have a bunch of content on there. My passion that I learned early is to find a way to give away all of our educational content as much as we can. LinkedIn's another platform where if you go to LinkedIn, we do a video a day of experience or content or interviews for situations like this to spread a message. And my want is to help. Our friend Sean Welsh said this recently about Ryan Reynolds, that he's scarily accessible. My side is if those are people that need help, I'll find time. I want to get back and support the people of our industry. I think ops and process will take care of itself once we get more time to take care of us. And the other thing I'll show, this is a very beat up copy, but this is the book you can find on Amazon. You can't do it alone. I tried for decades to do it. We're not trying. I have no interest in selling books. If anybody sells a book on Amazon, we make less than $1. I really do believe from the feedback that some of the messages helps and it might help you.
Yeah.
If somebody can afford the book, I'll send you one.
Well, thank you. And are you ready for our rapid fire question? And
Mackenzie, yes,
Mackenzie, I said, pick the hard one. Pick the hard ones. And so question number one is, if you were given the power to ban any cuisine forever, what is it and why?
To eat any cuisine forever, to enjoy it?
Yeah.
It would be pasta for me. It's been a thing since I was a kid. I miss my mom so much. I've got her sauce recipe framed on my kitchen counter. But I'm telling you, it is not attractive. Might be a little bit of a turn off for anybody around me when you put a bowl of pasta in front of me.
I can see people already clicked off because we just have our audience. Question number 2. What is a kitchen gadget or kitchen tool which is way overrated?
Yeah, so I'm a home chef, so I don't want to knock the brand, but I bought a Bluetooth meat thermometer recently. It's a really good idea. Just I think it's something that I could be taught how to do it without the. I'm not knocking the tool. The tool works. I might have cooked it, and it's now in a C shape. So yeah, I think that was a very expensive gadget. I did not need.
Oh my God, I cannot really. I have one and it doesn't connect. It doesn't stay connected. Sometimes it's harder doing that. Just sticking in,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
great idea.
I just gotta trust myself. Yeah.
Last one, if given the power to ban a ingredient forever, what is it and why?
This is a tough one. I'm learning, but I've had a love-hate relationship with cilantro for a long time. And I know any chef's going to kill me for it. So I am enjoying it now more, but I had like this huge issue with it for years. It just didn't land well in my palate or my mouth. But I'm growing. But that right now is one that I'm curious on how do I not just get overwhelmed. And it is, yeah, that's me. I
Okay,
might get beaten
I
up for
think
that one, but
the other half of the listeners just clicked off now
yeah,
because
I
lost,
have some of my
lost
chef friends. I know what I'm getting for lunch next when I show up to work with my group of chefs next Monday.
uh, yeah, we have a delicious pasta with cilantro sauce for you.
Yeah.
Matt, first off, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for sharing of your experience and the things you see in the industry. I could talk to you forever. Just looking, we over 45 minutes, and I feel like we just started a conversation. So, Matt, thanks for the gift of your time. Thanks for sharing so freely to the audience and to our audience. If you haven't done so, make sure you guys look him up, follow him on LinkedIn, follow his content. He's absolutely amazing what he does. And the reason we have this show is because of people like him. And for me, everywhere I go, I talk about Matt because more people need to know about you and what you do. So with that, I want to say thanks, not for today. Thank you for what you do for the industry.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having a conversation that we'll start having and creating the space for us to be vulnerable and be real. Thank you.
Great. I really appreciate it. With that, until next time, remember to disrupt your kitchen, fire up your career, stay hungry for change. I'm Christian, the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur host. I'm signing off. Matt, thanks for being here today. And to our listeners, be the change, be the challenge, and be the chef who sets the world on fire. With that, I want to say thanks, everybody. Stay disruptive, and we see you guys on Thursday.